The wind moves the empty beam, and the rope still creaks, even when the air stands still. This ground remembers death. In the middle of the 19th century, a man named Yankee Jim Robinson was hanged here in San Diego. His neck didn't break right away. He was too tall. For several long minutes, he choked and gasped for breath, his toes scraping the dirt beneath him. Witnesses said that just before he lost consciousness, he smiled. 5 years later, a businessman named Thomas Whaley bought the very same hill. When people warned him that the land was cursed, he simply said, "The dead don't walk." But when his house rose over the gallows ground, footsteps began to echo through its halls. And since then, no one has ever been truly alone there. Before we descend into the story, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. Your support helps me uncover more places where the past still lingers in the dark. Now, let's return to the story. After the hanging of Yankee Jim Robinson, the land where the gallows stood fell silent. The dirt road grew wild with weeds. The beams darkened under the rain, and locals began to avoid the place. They said the air smelled like smoke, even when nothing burned, and that at night, footsteps echoed on the dry soil when no one was there. The authorities ignored the stories, yet one short line survived in the town's records: the gallows removed. Residents avoid the area. Livestock refused to cross the hill. Years passed. San Diego began to grow, and the land that once held death became valuable. People tried to forget that a man had once fought for his life there, but the legend of the tall man who hung between heaven and earth endured. Witnesses swore they had seen him walking along the old road, a tall shadow in a long coat that vanished when anyone approached. Thomas Whaley, an ambitious merchant, bought the land in 1856. He was a practical man, educated and skeptical. When he heard about the gallows, he laughed it off as local superstition. "It's just dirt," he said. "Ghosts don't leave footprints." He began to build his house, not knowing that his foundation would rest directly on the beams that once supported a man's final breath. Thomas Whaley came to San Diego looking for a fresh start. He built one of the finest homes in the young city. 2 stories, solid brick, wide staircases, and tall windows. The first floor served as a store and a small theater, while the upper level became the family's living space. Whaley's wife Anna hosted small dinners, and their children played happily in the yard. For a while, it seemed like the curse had lifted, but soon the house began to stir. Anna heard footsteps downstairs at night. The children woke crying, saying they saw a tall man standing near the door. The servants begged to sleep outside. Whaley dismissed it all, joking that if there were ghosts, they ought to pay rent. One night, he woke to the sound of boots on the stairs. Heavy, dragging, deliberate. When he went down with a lamp, there was no one there. Only the front door swinging gently in the cold wind. Customers stopped coming to his store. They said it felt too cold near the counter, as if someone unseen stood there. The laughter in the house grew rare. Whaley wrote in his journal, "The nights feel long. Something watches from the hall." The house that was meant to bring success had begun to breathe with something else. For months, Thomas Whaley convinced himself that everything was fine. Every unexplained sound had a logical reason. The creaking of old wood, the wind through the shutters, fatigue after long days. He believed that if he ignored the strange, it would eventually go away. He ran his store downstairs, selling imported goods to the growing town. Upstairs, His family lived in comfort. His wife Anna hosted small dinners. The children played in the yard, and Thomas often sat by the window, proud of his brick house that overlooked the dusty road. But the peace didn't last. One windy evening, Anna heard footsteps below, heavy, deliberate. She thought Thomas had returned, but when she came downstairs, the hall was empty. On the floor were footprints leading toward the basement door. When she opened it, a cold wave of air brushed her face, a chill far too deep to be just a draft. Soon, the house began to behave on its own. Candles went out by themselves, objects shifted places, and at night, there were always footsteps on the stairs. The children woke crying, saying they saw the tall man in the long coat. Anna pleaded with her husband to bless the house, but Thomas refused. "It's just our minds," he said. "We create our own ghosts." In 1858, another child was born, a son. But joy turned to mourning within months. The boy died of fever right there, in the parlor. It was the first tragedy within those walls. After that day, no one stayed in the living room after dark. There was a heaviness in the air, as if the house itself breathed in time with the shadows. People in town began whispering, "The house that looks at death." Thomas still walked with his head high, but in his private journal, he began leaving short notes. "Footsteps again tonight. The presence by the stairs. Anna cannot sleep." No one knew it yet, but the house that was meant to represent a new beginning had just opened its doors to something that would never leave. The child's death changed everything. Even the air inside the house grew heavy, thick, unmoving, like before a storm. Anna Whaley stopped leaving her room, and Thomas withdrew from the town. Neighbors said the windows were always covered, and that at night, a faint light glowed in the parlor, the same room where the baby had died. One neighbor swore he'd seen Thomas standing there for hours, his silhouette motionless against the flickering lamp. He wasn't looking at anything, just staring into the dark. From that night, the unexplained became routine. Doors opened on their own. The store bell rang after midnight. Dust on the stairs showed the prints of small, barefoot feet. Thomas's journal grew longer. Shadows move, even when the lamps are out. Noise from the basement, like something being dragged. Anna says the child calls her from the parlor. Doctors blamed grief. A priest urged them to leave San Diego, but Thomas refused. "This is my home," he said. "If it's cursed, then I'll be cursed with it." Anna began hearing crying, faint at first, then louder, until one night she followed the sound downstairs. She screamed. A candle on the windowsill flared to life, and in the glow, she swore she saw a tiny hand reaching toward her. The next morning, the family left the house for several weeks. When they returned, the silence was unchanged. The same dust, the same cold stillness. But on the parlor table lay a child's toy, one they'd left upstairs before leaving. From then on, no one in town mocked the Whaley stories. The house had a reputation now, a place where time didn't move, and even those who didn't believe chose to keep their distance. More than 10 years passed after the child's death. The Whaley House stood frozen in time. Curtains drawn, dust settled thick on the furniture, a quiet sadness in every room. Their daughter, Violet Whaley, was gentle and reserved, fond of writing letters and watching the street from the upstairs window. She was the light of the house until she met a man who promised her love and a new life. The wedding was planned for spring. The family prepared joyfully. Even Thomas, who rarely smiled, looked at peace for the first time in years. But the groom never came. He disappeared, leaving behind only a short note. No explanation, no goodbye. Weeks passed. Violet became distant, quiet. She spent long hours sitting in the parlor, the same room where her brother had died, staring into the floorboards. Anna begged her to leave the house, but Violet would only whisper, "I can't. This house won't let me go." On an August morning in 1885, Violet locked herself in her room upstairs. When Anna knocked, there was no answer. They found her dead, a gunshot wound to the chest, the pistol belonging to her father. The police report was brief: self-inflicted gunshot wound. Violet Eloise Whaley, age 22. That same day, Thomas ordered every mirror in the house covered. He said her soul shouldn't have to see itself. Anna tried to pray, but confessed she couldn't stand near Violet's door. Because sometimes, late at night, she heard quiet sobbing from within. After the funeral, neighbors noticed that Violet's window was always open, even in the rain. Sometimes the curtains moved, though no one was inside. Months later, early visitors to the house reported seeing a young woman in white standing by that very window, gazing into the yard. They called her the Lady in White. After Violet's death, the Whaley family never smiled again. The house became a hollow shell, large, cold, and empty. Anna aged quickly. Thomas rarely left his study. Even on bright days, the room stayed dim, as if light itself faded faster within those walls. By the early 1890s, the family abandoned the house. They moved to another part of town, but those who passed by swore they saw lights flicker inside. Sometimes there was a faint tapping sound, and, on still nights, the echo of a woman's voice singing softly upstairs. When Thomas Whaley died in the 1890s, the house lost its master. Anna refused to return at first, but years later, now a widow, she did. Some said she couldn't bear to live anywhere else. This was where her memories were buried. She spent her final years there, dying quietly in the same upstairs room where she'd once heard her daughter cry. After her death, the house stood empty for decades. But emptiness didn't mean silence. When restoration work finally began, laborers reported hearing footsteps and a child's laughter. One man quit on the spot, saying, "I won't touch these walls if someone's behind me." Local historians collected dozens of testimonies: shadows by the windows, doors opening on their own, the smell of smoke with no fire nearby. When the property was declared a historical landmark in the mid-20th century, the reports became official. Night guards left entries in the logbook. Stairs creaked. No one visible. Front door opened. Lock untouched. Female voice near the Violet room. Even during the day, visitors said the air felt colder than outside. Those who stood by the upstairs window, the one where Violet once stood, often turned suddenly, convinced someone was breathing just behind them. The first visitors to the restored Whaley House treated the ghost stories as tourist folklore. But within months, museum staff began keeping a logbook of observations, short, matter-of-fact entries with no interpretation. Stairs creaked after closing. Checked. No one there. Parlor light turned on by itself. Source unknown. Bright shape appeared near the old mirror on film. It marked the beginning of a new era for the old house. It was no longer just a historical monument. It was now among the most documented haunted locations in the U.S. In the 1960s, San Diego newspapers ran a series of articles titled The Whaley House, where the dead still speak. They chronicled countless reports of laughter, whispers, and the sound of crying from the second floor. A night guard named Raymond Kelly claimed he saw a man in a dark coat standing by the stairs. "I was sure it was a living person," he said, "but when I raised my lantern, he was gone. Only cold air and shadow remained." Photographers noticed distortions and light flares on their negatives. Some showed blurred faces, others a misty figure near the window. In several cases, cameras stopped recording for no reason. During a 1990s documentary shoot, the audio engineer captured an unidentified whisper. The language unrecognizable, but confirmed to be authentic and unedited. Today, the museum archive holds hundreds of written testimonies. Some visitors report the scent of cigar smoke in rooms where smoking has been banned for decades. Others claim to see a young woman in white who disappears the moment someone calls her name. Long-term staff members say the house holds the energy of the Whaley family. They don't call it evil, they call it memory, a trace of people who once lived, loved, and died within its walls. Still, one thing remains constant. No one leaves this house unchanged. Those who step outside often pause, feeling the air heavier, thicker, and for just a few seconds more, they swear they still hear footsteps following behind. Today, the Whaley House stands in the heart of Old Town San Diego, surrounded by souvenir shops and sunlight. But when night falls and the doors are locked, the house exhales, and the past wakes up. Footsteps echo from beneath the floorboards, from the same earth where Yankee Jim Robinson was hanged. Historians say nearly every tragedy in the Whaley family occurred directly above those gallows beams. Thomas himself once laughed and said, "The dead don't walk." Now those words sound more like a curse carved into wood. More than 150 years later, visitors still report seeing a tall figure in a dark coat moving through the parlor before fading into nothing. They say it isn't Thomas, nor any of his family. It's the tall man whose feet once brushed the ground as he fought for air, the man who smiled at death. The Whaley House is now known as the most haunted home in America. Night tours are held for the brave, lights are dimmed, and faint footsteps echo down the hall. Some visitors feel calm, believing the spirits have found peace. Others leave pale and trembling, certain they heard a voice whisper their name. The curse of the gallows isn't in screams or shadows. It's in the memory that clings to the walls, in the silence that breathes, and in the ground beneath the house, which still refuses to let go of those who once touched it for the last time.